गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंदा
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंदा
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंदा
गोविंद हरि गोविंद गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि
ओम नमो नारायण ओम नमो नारायण
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 केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव
केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव
माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव
माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंदा
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंदा
ओम नमो नारायण ओम नमो नारायण
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 ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण
ये श्री कृष्णचंद्र भगवान की जय
जय
सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय
जय
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी
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 वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गिरिधारी
गोविंद
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 गोविंद गिरिधारी
गोविंद
गोविंद
गिरिधारी
गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी ये वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय। श्री सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय। भज मन राधे गोविंदा भज मन राधे गोविंदा भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
मन गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
भज मन गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
मन गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
भज मन वृंदावन संचारी
मन
Hari Om everyone. Can you all see me clearly and hear me clearly as well? So the situation with Omicron, and now they say there is IHU and then there is Deltacron. So as these things keep spreading, I think we have to be just cautious and careful. And if you have been vaccinated, they say the recovery will be fast, but at the same time, they're saying there'll be some kind of impact or the other that will be lingering through once it impacts. Hopefully, it'll be least impactful if you do come across that. But needless to say, please be, when the rest of them need not have a mask, but you please carry one. You not just carry, but wear one. I'm told in the Japanese and the Southeast Asian, it has become a norm that even if they have slight sniffles or anything, they usually wear a mask in the crowded trains or even to the offices. So I think the mask on our face is going to stay for a very long time. If you have not already gotten used to it, get used to it and start wearing it. And wear it simple. Wear either a surgical mask or an N95, or in a very, very crowded, congested environment, both. But be careful. And they say vitamin D. So go out in the sun. That's a slower process of production. But you taking the vitamin D, and there are the other vitamins. So keep yourself pumped, stay thoroughly charged. That's about being cautious. Because sometimes when it is happening all around, we become desensitized and come to think that it's okay. It's okay. Things will happen. I'll brave it. It's not that simple. So better to be safe than to be stupid and sorry. Anyways, coming back, please turn your videos on and we will start with the prayers. And those of you who have joined, we have the self unfoldment in three phases. The first phase, I speak on the chapters. The second phase, you ask me questions on that particular chapter. And then the third phase is I give you about 15-20 questions and then randomly pick one of you who has been listening, who has been coming regularly, and ask them the questions. And that's the best part. I eagerly wait for that. Your understanding, your manana of the entire churning process, and the different angles with which you come in your understanding to present it. That's the most cherishing part. I look forward for that all 3 weeks. That's my best part, I would say. So somebody who was hearing me say, yeah, why not, Swamiji? You don't have to speak. I have done my bit. It is to hear the result of it. That's the most fulfilling part. So all done and said, let's begin with three Oms, Sahanavavatu and Guru Brahma. ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Those of you who have just joined, turn your videos on. There seemed to be a combined package there. Okay, now that I have a vivid view of who are all present and in each box, how many of you are present, now that I have figured that out. So let's begin the question answers. So the first question, I'll start with Suraj Patnaik.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om. How are you? Bhalo chanti ki?
Mu bhala achi Swamiji.
Mu bhalo achi.
That's great, Swamiji.
Ask. So I was waiting.
I just feel like saying that is like so many syllables. And so I try to avoid being like, Aporno ke miti achanti. Like it's just so much. My mouth, like it's hard for me to form those words.
So you are in that lazy mode, huh?
I feel like my parents would be really disappointed if they heard me say that.
I'll only clip that portion and send it to them.
Oh no.
Once you're on YouTube, it is like an eternal thing, man.
I know. I have to basically just come to terms with that.
Okay, my question for you this week is the method of Vasana elimination is simple, so simple that it generally escapes our recognition. Why does it seem to be complicated to change my existing tendencies when the solution has been so simply beautifully laid out?
So, I think that in practice, the reason why Vasana elimination feels so complicated and difficult is because our tendencies have been repeated consistently over an extremely long period of time. So, in probably most cases of most of our vasanas, they've been repeating over several lifetimes. And so, even though the solution that's given is very clear that you're working in this field of objects, and so in that field itself, you remove your attachment to the object of your desire, and through that, you eliminate your vasana. So, understanding that you can just read it in a couple of words and theoretically understand that, okay, this seems like it's pretty simple. But then putting it into practice, because we've conditioned ourselves to repeat our vasanas over and over for so long. So that's why that initial step of realizing what we need to do and putting it into practice can be difficult. But the way that we counter that and face it, even though it's difficult and challenging, is by shifting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. So this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, just in terms of my own growth in being in graduate school. So I inevitably have to, I'm going to be thrown so much information in the next couple of years that I'm going to be expected to practice. But it's my choice whether I look at my intelligence level now and think it is what it is and I'll never change, or I can give myself room and opportunity to grow. So if we look at this process of vasana elimination and think, despite how challenging it may be, that's the whole point of my life. And so I'm going to dedicate myself now to face life with this challenge and grow. Something, Swamiji, that you actually said that really resonated with me in the past few weeks was the idea of looking at life like a game. And when you gave the example of the baseball player, um, when you have when you've been practicing something and you're looking to really exhibit that mastery, you don't want to face life in a way that everything is easy all the time. So the whole point of why people enjoy playing sports and showing their mastery is because there's an inevitable challenge that has to be faced. There would never be an athlete out there who just wants to be given like easy throws every single time just to show how great they are, because that's not going to give them that sense of fulfillment. So when we realize that the whole point of life is to overcome challenging circumstances and to face difficulties with strength, then it gives us that courage, it gives us motivation to face it. And that's how we move forward and grow and develop.
Awesome. Harigaru?
Everybody. Building on what Surajbhai said, the great point of going from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. The reason why I stay in this fixed mindset is I think that the toolkit that I've been given of this body, mind, and intellect, it's set in stone. And to change the very nature of this toolkit is a monumental task ahead of me. As much as I'd like tomorrow morning, if I don't have a good hand-eye coordination, I'm not going to wake up suddenly and be a master athlete. That's not how it works. In the same way, at the mental level, if there are certain challenges that I've been facing, those aren't going to just go away just by wishing it away. Now, I can try hard to change certain aspects of this toolkit. Even that sometimes is a monumental challenge. But what we have in this growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset is using the present toolkit I have with its pluses, with its minuses, putting that in a good, productive way, sublimation, as Gurudev puts it in Self-Unfoldment, and working on my vasanas that way. So it's not an overhaul of the equipment that I have, but rather using the given equipment in a positive way to work on the patterns that I've set for myself. That's all I have.
Another deeper angle why the layers of vasanas that we have conditioned ourselves to live in becomes that difficult to grow over or to bring in any iota of change is there is a lot of our personality or our ego that is invested in it. And the ego thrives. The definition of ego is there is kartritva and then there is bhoktritva out of it. Kartritva means there is a doership and then there is a bhoktritva. There is an enjoyership out of it. And it is this enjoyership that keeps us enticed in any karma, any pattern, any conditioning. And many times we become very complacent in a pattern of existence, in a conditioning that which we feel comfortable in, and we don't want to get out of it. We don't want to move out of it, and yet we would go to all the altars possible whenever, meaning the temple or Tirtha Yatra or wherever we go, and then pray and ask and demand through our prayers that Bhagavan, please bring a change in me. It reminds me of a funny incident that Puja Guruji once said, that there was this fellow who would go to Bhagavan Ganesha, and every week he would pray, chant Ganesha Atharva Sirsha. He did that for 41 weeks, and he was like, Bhagavan, let me win this lottery. Let me win this big lottery that they have been announcing. And Bhagavan finally got frustrated with this fellow and appeared and gave him one tight slap and said, "Pehle lottery to khareed." It's like you don't even want to put that effort that is required to take in the right direction, but you want Bhagavan to come and do everything for you. So that is where many Mahatmas have said, Bhagavan helps those that truly want to help themselves, meaning to grow. And we become complacent in our pattern. So the Upanishad says that this Atma Vidya is not for those who are scared, who lack courage. Ayam Atma balahinena na labhyaha. Those who lack courage to bring that change within. And if we come to the complacent, we are like this only, what to do? I'm okay. If I'm not like this, then people will not recognize me as me. Then why should I change? So please be where you are. Continue. But if you truly want to grow and grow in a pattern which is time tested, which is beneficial for oneself as well as for the environment around, then one has to take a grip at it, understand that there are vikara, from vikara to the samskara, and from samskara to beyond, and it is a lifetime achievement to grow step by step. It's a marathon. It is not a short sprint that you expend all your energies now in one and then say, I'm exhausted. No, this is a marathon. So you prepare for that marathon long run, constantly work at it and keep at it. If you say, oh, I have put the car in a cruise mode, it should take care of itself. No, it will take care of one particular aspect of it. The rest of it is still in your hands. And that cannot be given up. Otherwise, there will be accidents. So don't give up. Don't give in. Constantly work on it. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay. The next one. I'm not going to call on Ashi and Amulya because both of them have not attended this particular chapter, and even Aditya. Hemant. Hari Om. எப்படி இருக்கு?
சௌக்கியம் சுவாமிஜி. சுவாமிஜி சௌக்கியமா?
நான் சூப்பரா இருக்கேன்டா. Okay. The question for you is, when we talk of surrender, how do we grapple with the ego that refuses to give itself up?
Okay, so I think I'll first start out by saying what I believe surrender means is, does not mean that, when something needs to be done, that we don't do it and just, be like, okay, it's all in Bhagwan's hand and I'm just going to surrender and wait for the result. From what I understand, it means that we got to do our part. We got to do our part to make sure come to the fullest, and we have to do like our best in it. And ultimately, whatever happens after that, whatever is not in our hands, leaving it up to, Bhagwan, that's called surrender. But it does not mean not putting in the effort, because that's not called surrender. That's called stupidity, for lack of a better term. So I guess honestly, when it comes to grappling with the ego, the important part is to determine whether or not we really did do our best, and whether or not there are circumstances and things that we cannot control. And recognizing that, if we're able to recognize it, then at that very point there is no more ego. It just means that we've done our part, and now, regardless of anything else, it's best to wait and surrender.
I hear you. Brahmacharini Divya, do you want to add?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, yes, the opposite of an ego, right, is surrender. Another word I would use is to be humbled. So when we talk about the ego, it's, especially in terms of this chapter, it dwells and defines and reinforces its likes and dislikes. So one of the first strategies that I have read is that to try focusing on the good things in life and to mellow down the hatred or the rejections that the ego has a tendency to do. So dwell on the mercies we live by instead of the miseries, right? So this is, in other words, gratefulness, right? Gratitude. But I have noticed that in terms of expressing gratefulness, the ego can still play its cards when attempting to be grateful, right? Oftentimes when we realize that things have been given to us, the ego tries to make its presence known by saying that, twisting that idea and saying, you know what, now I'm a dependent, I'm a burden, or this is like, it starts to skew that perception and it creates frustrations. That is still the presence of the ego trying to reject the thought of gratefulness, right? Thoughts of jealousy are also forms of not being grateful to the achievements of others, looking up to people, because surrendering and to be humbled is to acknowledge the greatness of other people, right? Because it's a recognition of what our own ego does not do. So even then, the word jealousy is the form and presence of ego in trying to be appreciative. So those are all signs to recognize where the ego is. And the opposite of such rejection and hatred in that form would be to express love. So now I wanted to bring the example from Ramayana of Bali, right? The strategy to conquer Bali is not to go head on, right? But to go around it and to come from behind it, right? To conquer it. So if I try to forcefully say, I'm going to crush my ego and make it small and make it surrender, right? It'll fight back pretty hard. So instead, that strategy of looking from the perspective of love, of opening and being all accommodative and compassionate, focusing on that puts my focus on others. When I focus on their needs, I'm focusing less on what I need or what I like and where I stand. So the indirect way of actively addressing our ego is to focus on others, focus on a higher vision, and not on me, myself, and I. The last and most ultimate way that the ego gets quelled is life itself will humble you. If you stay long enough in your egotistical ways, the consequences of your actions will be the whip to give you that humbling moment. So even appreciating those consequences and saying that this is for my ego is another way of helping it calm down. So that's that.
The reason I smiled at the very end was if we live that long, don't worry about it. Aneka janma samprapta. If not here, then it'll catch up in the next life as well. There is no escape of it. But adding some very pragmatic tip on observing and practicing on a day-to-day basis. That day when we stop demands and complaints, let us start with, say, going through 1 week at a time. Put a target for yourself. This coming 1 week, I will not complain about anything. You are putting yourself, whenever we take that project on ourselves, we are taking up a very practical step in trying to accept. Because the key for surrender is it starts with the first step called acceptance. As long as we keep complaining and whining and demanding, we will not get to that first step. So take a practical step. For 1 week, try, observe. I will not complain about anything in life. Come what may. It's too cold. Yes, you can make an observation of the situation saying, yes, it is cold. But then immediately after that, there is this complaining mode. It immediately switches to the second thought. And from the second thought, there is a complaint mode that begins. There is no problem absolutely in the observation mode. That's an observation. Yeah, water is cold. Sometimes it happens. Like I'm living, and Brahmachari also lives in the next room down the hall. So when we use early morning to shower, I take couple of showers in the morning. So by the time I come to my second shower, if the water is cold, I know that he has taken a shower. But that's the sequence it is going to be. There is no point complaining about it or whining about it or getting irritated about it or allowing it to get, okay, fine. So today is the time when there is cold. Just make an observation and to stop with that observation rather than slipping down the path of complaints. The second step in bringing in this acceptance is to drop the cravings expressing as demands. to observe these two facets, I think let's start with the first step. Take it as your personal chore, personal observation for the next week. You will be surprised how many times the mind knows nothing but to complain, constantly draining the energy only through that complaints. To make an observation and to bring in a change is a very productive way to do it. But to sit there and constantly whine about it ain't gonna be productive. So that acceptance gives you the room and the scope to grow. And that is the beginning step for surrender. The very practical step that I did want to mention. Thank you both. Can we bring in Siddharth?
Hari Om Swamiji.
Kushalam va?
Kushlam ham kushali asmi. Bhavanapi kushali astiva.
Samyak.
Uttama.
Now my question to you is, to one who has experienced egoless bliss, work is no longer a training for the mind, but a fulfillment of one's own self-realization. What is the purpose of work at that stage if it is a fulfillment of one's own self-realization?
The first thing that comes to mind for me with this question is from the pledge, may thy grace flow through us to the world around us. And there's a notion that when you have that sense of realization, your notion of the self encompasses everything and everyone around you. You see the Paramatma in everyone and everything. So when you're working, it is for the self, and that's that sense of self-realization for everyone. All the actions that are being done are in actions of service. And the other aspect of it is that for other work that is to be done, for one who is like Jivan Mukta, who is realized, there is still prarabdha for that jiva to go through. And to understand that at the intellectual level, that there are still actions and things that need to be done.
Can I just, sorry to jump in there. You said a Jivan Mukta, there is a Jiva still?
The Shariram at least has the Shariram.
So the Jivan Mukta does not have a Jivatva, but there is still the equipment of Sharira Mana Buddhi. So that will go through the Prarabdha.
Yes, thank you, Swamiji.
Go ahead.
The equipment still has Prarabdha to go through. And so it's to understand that at the intellectual level, that be it whatever may come, that this has to go through and I have to act in it. So just play along.
Okay.
Go along for the ride.
Let's see what Harigaru has to say.
Look at Bhagavad Gita, for instance, where action has a role in my development. Inaction also has a role in my development. And Arjuna's question is, you're saying both of these things. The start of chapter 5's question is, then Bhagavan, which one do I do then? Which is more important? And then Bhagavan tells him it's a sequential thing, not something to be done concurrently. So the question arises then that what is the purpose of work at that stage where I know what my true nature is? And this argument comes up, and there's one dialogue with Vidyaranyana Swamiji where the student asks him, what use does action have for that person who's realized? It's not like he has to use it to work on his vasanas at that point. And the Acharya replies, what's the use of inaction at this stage then too? It's not that inaction is going to keep him curbed with his, in karmendriya so that he's not going here and there. He knows what the truth is. Nothing's going to taint him going forward. So inaction or action really has no consequence. If it's for lokasangraha, the work of the people to help them, then they go on and act. If they feel that's not necessary, they don't act then either.
Okay. I think we'll have to develop a code, like how they have in the walkie-talkie, over and out. With both of your answers, I don't think there is much to add at this point because we will be discussing more. There is a chapter of self realization where I will pound extensively on that particular topic. Then I'll hold it off till then because it's just in about 2 more chapters will be there. Thank you both. Hari Om. Kartika.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om. कैसे हो?
अच्छी हूँ स्वामी जी, आप कैसे हैं?
नेनु अच्छा हूँ.
About me, thank, I don't know how to mix Telugu and Hindi together. Telugu is nice.
Telugu. Okay. So, my question for you this week is, what is the biggest challenge of controlling the tongue as a karmendriya and as a jnanendriya? What are the key principles to remember or to have clarity to control it?
So I guess first I will go into what I believe is karmendriya versus jnanendriya. So karmendriya, I'm thinking that, it's one who is kind of controlled by the body. So the thoughts, are controlled by your sharira, and jnanendriya is more controlled by perception and your thoughts,
I'll pause here.
Yeah.
Karmendriya is the organs of action.
Okay.
And jnanendriyas are the input devices, the organs of knowledge.
Okay.
The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Those are the jnanendriyas, organs of perception. Continue.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Swamiji, can you repeat again karmendriya?
Karmendriyas are organs of action. So the organs of actions are the speech, then the hands and legs to hold and walk, and then the 2 excretory organs. So all these 5 put together are karmendriyas.
Okay.
Whereas jnanendriyas, they're called the organs of action. Then the other 5 are called the organs of perception. The tongue acts both as organ of perception as well as organ of action. Speech as well as taste. So I had mentioned that to control, to bring in a certain discipline, that one should start with the tongue, the boneless muscle which eats and speaks. So how does one go about bringing that control?
Yes, Swamiji, so I think main thing that comes to my mind is, your likes and dislikes is controlled by, your tongue. So in terms of, if you're thinking of karmendriya, then in terms of taste, it's controlling, your likes and dislikes in terms of what you believe tastes good or tastes bad. Whereas with jnanendriya, it's controlling, what you perceive is what you perceive you should say versus not say in a certain situation. So I guess in both circumstances, thinking about maybe I need help in this question a little bit, Swamiji.
Got it.
Okay.
I think you are wrapped up in that 2 terms of karmendriya and jnanendriya.
Yeah.
So let's see if Brahmacharini Divya, she will provide a certain direction, and then I'll wrap it up finally for you.
Okay,
No
thanks.
worries.
Sure. So in that question, when we say the tongue as a karmendriya, I would consider that the tongue acting as the speech function. So what's the biggest challenge in controlling speech? When the tongue is functioning as a jnanendriya, that would be the tongue acting as the taste buds. So, craving foods or particular tastes. So what is the biggest challenge in controlling that eating, tasting habits, right? I hope that helped with the two definitions. So when it comes to controlling speech, well, actually with both of these functions of the tongue, the real challenge is that the tongue is very closely associated with our ego, right? This is the closest expression of our ego that we can really see, which is why it's the hardest one to really manage. And if we can do that, then all the other ones are easily controllable. So in terms of the tongue being the speech, our words, our ideas, our convictions, that are expressions of likes and dislikes, or as Swami just talked about, the demands and complaints we have, we can clearly hear it in our own speech. So the biggest challenge is, again, I think same as the previous question, then how do I control my ego? How do I surrender to it? And the observation of our speech is a great, gauge of what am I saying, how am I saying it, why am I saying it, has my ego been checked? The speech is a great place to observe and see its evolution. So in terms of speech, the principles or to remember when controlling that is actually my skill of listening. So I'm changing, what I'm focusing on. Do I have the ability to listen and observe and keep my mouth shut, right? In situations, do I have that ability to keep it quiet so that I can listen? Because I can't talk and listen at the same time. So specifically that we should focus on is learning the proper way to speak through our shastras and through respectable elders, that we pay attention to how to talk. Hanumanji is a great example in terms of how did he talk to Ravana? How did he talk to Sri Ramji? How did he talk to King Sugriva? In each case, there's no hard, fast rule as to how to talk, how not to talk. But observing our shastras in terms of how speech is represented is a great way of listening and understanding the control of speech. And respectable elders, and I put the adjective respectable because we often have great examples of how speech should not be done. So finding the right role models to listen to is the key to controlling our tongue. And in terms of controlling the tongue as the taste, this is now the Jnanendriya. I always remember this quote, but after thinking about this question, I got like a deeper insight into this quote that I held on to. There are those that live to eat, and there are those that eat to live, right? And we want to be those that eat to live, meaning that whenever we eat, we have to treat food as medicine. And oftentimes, right before, so maybe this is a practical thing we can try to observe our perspective on eating is, before I eat a morsel, I ask myself, am I treating this as a medicine? And immediately I can tell whether I'm thinking of it as a medicine or not. If I'm craving for something, or I'm really excited to eat it, or I have a strong reaction like, oh my gosh, I don't want it, I hate it, like those reactions tell me I'm not treating it like medicine. But as soon as I realize that it is medicine, it calms down. That reaction or the voices in my head commenting on the food stop, right? So am I treating this as medicine? Yes or no? Simple. And that'll tell me how I'm controlling my tongue as a taste.
Okay. One particular, because she mentioned about Hanumanji, so immediately I got reminded of it. as a karmendriya, meaning as a instrument of action, which is speech.
Mm.
Now, Hanumanji's so many examples can be cited as the perfect control of the organ called speech. Just because I have the pressure of an opinion, just because I have the itch to blurt out something, one has to be very, very careful. What surroundings am I in? And Hanumanji's life is a very good display of understanding at various situations how to use the speech. One such example is when Hanumanji has just returned back from Lanka. Okay. What was the purpose for him to be on that expedition? Is to find the details about Sitaji.
Mm.
Pure, straight, simple. And they have been out for several days, several weeks. And the eagerness in Bhagwan must be up there. Like that you've been gone on a project. That is one thing to learn also. Whenever there is a task being given, the one who is given that task, it is their responsibility to turn around, however small be the task, to report back that this has been done or not done, or what portion of it has been done. Many times we don't do that. We think that one task given, done. In the sequence of grand scheme of things, you are not plugging it back in. Okay, that is the first point. Second point is he understands the eagerness with which Bhagwan is waiting there. So as soon as he comes, in Valmiki Ramayana, the words are very, very particular. Okay. He says, Sita drashta maya Sita.
Mm.
Drashta meaning seen. Dekh liya maine. I've seen. So there is immediate relief that not only that there is a knowledge of where Sitaji is, he has seen also. Drashta maya Sita. Otherwise, if you and I go for a debrief in a meeting and then we start, the story of Ramayana. Most of us know it, at least the framework of it. So Bhagwan, when we left from here, we got caught up in that, and then in that mountain, and then we lost our way, and then we finally got out, and then there was Sampati, that fellow wanted to eat us all. And then we told him about Jatayu, and everybody was scared. Nobody knew how to get there, and we were scratching our heads. That is not the point. He doesn't even talk about those details. And then the exploits. As I landed in Lanka, I gave Lankini one blow and she fell, and then I went into Lankapuri. I went. Those Rakshasas, dirty fellows, they are eating all kinds of nonsense. Yeah. No, he didn't go into any of those details. Straight, simple. That is the Vakpatutvam, the control on speech. That you speak something which is comprehensive and succinct.
Mm.
Okay. It has to be comprehensive. And the best you see is Hanumanji, where he says that, hey, I have seen Sitaji. Sitaji is seen. She is safe. The next sentence. She is eagerly waiting for you. His job done. He does not go about talking about, if you can't sell yourself, you cannot market yourself, nobody will recognize, you will not get a promotion. This is bunch of nonsense that we learn in the cubicle politics called the corporate sector. But in simple life, it is that comprehensiveness that is provided, and that is your role. That is the control on speech. When to speak, how much to speak, when to stop. As much as to speak is important, I tell people, sometimes when they go on this spree of self-inflicting situations, so I tell them, stop. Give me that spade, because you have dug yourself a deep enough a grave. Give that spade now. Stop. Because you keep digging and digging, and you will be the one falling in there. Okay. So when to stop, and knowing when not to speak. When you see that the other person is hurting, when the other person is feeling low, you saying one more statement like a whiplash on something which is already going down, you're like throwing the mud into their face and further sinking in. Not required. Most of the arguments that happens, right? You know that the other person has received the information, you know that the other person has understood what you're trying to communicate, but still we want to prove our ego and feel the last word win. Therefore, we want to say something which just zips them, shuts them, throws them in the corner. It's like punching. What I have seen is you can recover from a physical pain of something cut or a bruise or something. You will even forget about it, even if there is a scar. Okay, very easy to get over that. But the scar with the words that can be created in the heart, very difficult to grow out of. So one needs to be careful in that speech. So control on when to speak, when not to speak, how much to speak, how to speak comprehensively, how to speak, when to shut up, stop. Okay, that is speech. Then with the food, I think Brahmacharya Divya has, because of the taste, because the Jnanendriya, which is the organ of perception, the taste buds, how to control it, she has covered and given a comprehensive answer. So we got you covered.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Hari Om. Now going to the next question. Krishna Priya. Hari Om. బాగున్నావమ్మా?
బాగున్నాను స్వామీజీ, మీరు ఎట్లున్నారు?
బ్రహ్మాండంగా ఉన్నా.
Incredible. Love to hear it.
It means incredible. Brahmaandanga. Okay. The question for you this week. Since we developed our vasanas during these transactions in the world, then it must follow that they can be ended during contacts with the same world and not by sudden dash into isolated caves in Himalayas. How do I slow down and get a grip on analyzing my own thoughts and actions when worldly transactions never seem to be stopping?
Yeah. I think like the practical first step would be to analyze the responsibilities that we have in our life and see what's necessary and what's maybe not. I think a lot of times we're just like too busy to prioritize self-development. because we filled our life with all these distractions to keep ourselves from sinking into our thoughts. So just cutting out anything that's unnecessary would be something that we can do first off. And beyond that, I don't really think that it's an excuse to say that worldly transactions don't stop. I think that if we prioritize self-development, we'll make time for it. Just like how in our life currently, if we really want something, we're making time for it regardless of how many responsibilities we have. So maybe we don't even need to slow down that much. I mean, if we prioritize analysis of our thoughts and self-development, regardless of how many responsibilities we have, we're gonna make it happen on a daily basis.
Harigaru?
Our natural inclination in the face of the transacting happening in the world and understanding that vasanas I have to work on, we want to pause so that we can assess and take action. Because in the eye of the storm, when you have to make decisions and really focus on why am I reacting the way I'm reacting, that's very difficult to do. But the sad truth is these transactions don't stop. And the irony is the more I try to stop them, it seems like more things pile up and really take me for a spin. So the first step I have to take is accepting that these transactions won't stop. But then one benefit that we have then, understanding the task we have before us, is it reminds me of something Puja Guruji told us, that he went to a military academy in India, and the board in front of that academy was, the more we sweat in peace, the less we bleed in war. The more we sweat in peace, the less we bleed in war. So when my mindset is right, when I'm calm, if I can assess what my reactions are, what my patterns are, and get a good grip on myself at that point, when things go haywire, inevitably, then I can have a much stronger grip on the situation, know what my tendencies are, know how I react, and understand how to respond at that moment. That kind of legwork really comes in handy when inevitably things go bad. Now, one question that comes here is, what about solitude? That isn't solitude always recommended. In Sadhana Panchakam even, one of the 40 recommendations made to the sadhaka is ekante sukhamasyatam. Find that spot where you can find happiness in solitude. But we find that that's an erroneous jump to make, to go straight to solitude in any situation. It's like the example where churning milk makes butter. I wrongly think that the churning process is what makes that butter. So I start churning water and expect butter and get frustrated when that doesn't happen. The thing is, the milk is the thing that made that butter, not just the churning process. Like that, if my mind is already polluted and agitated, making it churn in that solitude is only going to produce more agitation. Not like something magical is going to happen there. Which is why one of my favorite books by Puja Gurudev, one of my all-time favorites, is a collection of essays called Pursuit of Happiness. And in there, there's one essay specifically on solitude, where he says that to discover your inner peace is the true religion. Test your religion in your reaction to solitude. So solitude is a step taken once the mind has been formidable to a certain extent, and to test how that mind reacts at that point, that's what solitude is used for. And when that mature mind is given to more mananam in that solitude, then there's the fruit of good understanding that comes out. So there's two sides to it. One where, yes, accepting transactions, but also understanding the point of solitude and the benefit comes when the mind has reached some maturity level. Over and out.
Thank you. Thank you. There is much that can be spoken on that, but I will refrain because we have reached to that point where it is to conclude in time. So since you are already on the frame, Krishna Priya, can you take the floor and give us a beautiful Hanuman Chalisa tune, please?
Sure, Swamiji. Shri Guru Charana Saroj Raj Nij Mana Mukur Sudhari Varno Raghuvar Vimal Jasa जोदायक फलचारी बुद्धिहीन तनु जानिके सुमिरो पवन कुमार बल बुद्धि विद्या देहु मोहि हरहु कलेश विकार। जय हनुमान ज्ञान गुण सागर जय कपीश तिहु लोक उजागर रामदूत अतुलित बल धामा अंजनी पुत्र पवन सुत नामा महावीर विक्रम बजरंगी कुमति निवार सुमति के संगी कंचन वर्ण विराज सुवेशा कानन कुंडल कुंचित केश हाथ वज्र ध्वजा विराजे कांधे मूंज जनेऊ साजे शंकर सुवन केसरी नंदन तेज प्रताप महाजगवंदन विद्यावान गुणी अति चातुर राम काज करिबे को आतुर प्रभु चरित्र सुनिबे को रसिया राम लखन सीता मन बसिया सूक्ष्म रूप धरि सियहि दिखावा बिकट रूप धरि लंक जरावा भीम रूप धरि असुर संहारे रामचंद्र के काज सवारे लाय संजीवन लखन जियाए श्री रघुवीर हर्षि उर लाए रघुपति कीन्ही बहुत बढ़ाई तुम मम प्रिय भरतहि सम भाई सहस बदन तुमरो जस गावे अस कहि श्रीपति कंठ लगावे सनकादिक ब्रह्मादि मुनीषा नारद शारद सहित ईसा यम कुबेर दिगपाल जहाते कवि कोविद कहि सके कहाते तुम उपकार सुग्रीवहि कीन्हा राम मिलाय राजपद दीन्हा तुमरो मंत्र विभीषण माना लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना युग सहस्र योजन पर भानु लीन्यो ताहि मधुर फल जानु प्रभु मुद्रिका मेरे मुख माहि जलधि नांगी गए अचर जनाहि दुर्गम काज जगत के जेते सुगम अनुग्रह तुमरे तेते राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे होतन आज्ञा बिनु पैसारे सब सुख लहे तुम्हारी शरणा तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना आपन तेज सम्हारो आपै तीनों लोक हांकते कांपै भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवै महावीर जब नाम सुनावै नासै रोग हरै सब पीरा जपत निरंतर हनुमत वीरा संकट ते हनुमान छुड़ावै मन क्रम वचन ध्यान जो लावै सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा तिनके काज सकल तुम साजा और मनोरथ जो कोई लावे सोई अमित जीवन फल पावे चारों युग परताप तुम्हारा है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियारा साधु संत के तुम रखवारे असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे अष्ट सिद्धि नवनिधि के दाता असबर दीन जानकी माता राम रसायन तुम्हारे पासा सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा तुम्हारे भजन राम को पावे जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे अंत काल रघुवर पुर जाई जहाँ जन्म हरि भक्त कहाई और देवता चित्तन धरई हनुमत से सर्व सुख करई संकट कटे मिटे सब पीरा जो सुमिरे हनुमत बलबीरा जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई कृपा करहु गुरुदेव की नाई जो शत बार पाठ कर कोई झूठ ही बंदी महासुख होय जो यह पढ़े हनुमान चालीसा होय सिद्धि साखी गौरीसा तुलसीदास सदा हरिचेरा की जय नाथ हृदय महडेरा पवन तनय संकट हरण मंगल मूर्ति रूप राम लखन सीता सहित हृदय बसहु सुर भूप सियावर रामचंद्र की जय। पवन सुत हनुमान की जय। उमापति महादेव की जय। बोलो भाई सब संतन की जय। श्री सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय।
Thank you, Ma. Very beautiful. Let us conclude with the Shanti Patha. ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतङ्गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ Take care everyone, be safe, see you next week with the next chapter. Hari Om.